Hello, my name is Milena, and this is an online presentation about my assessment task 2, my creative self-branding. A little bit about me is that I'm 21 years old and I have a Russian background. My desired area of study is something to do with photography or potentially something fashion related. Some keywords to describe me is that I'm a creative individual that is kind and friendly. Some activities that I am interested in are photography, film, media, and more. I also quite enjoy cursive fonts and digital media styles. For stage one, I did a lot of research where I looked through many different logos to start with. I really enjoyed a lot of logos from big designer brands and also logos that I found on Pinterest that had very cursive styles. I also included some brand styles that weren't very cursive and are more on the simple side in case I wanted to experiment with simplistic designs. For my second logo research page, I added a lot of logos that were just emblems in case I wanted to also experiment with that in my final logo design. I really liked logos that had unique and captivating designs, such as the Vivienne Westwood planet emblem and the Chanel rose. For my third logo page, I added a lot of logos that had both words and an emblem since I really liked the design of both being together. My favorite ones are the Charlotte Photography and the Craig's Photography logo, since I thought that they had very simple text with a logo that draws your eyes in first. For my colors, I focused more on finding objects or fabrics that represented the colors rather than finding hex code or plain images of the colors. I also tried to focus on adding images that the color was most likely found in, such as metal mostly being related to silver as an example. I started off by looking at silver so I could use it as a neutral color if I needed to, and also I like how flexible silver can be when making something. For my next color, I wanted to explore a warmer pastel shade since I really enjoy pastel colors and think they are appealing. For this pastel pink, I also used a lot of images I found on Pinterest and thought were most fitting. And for my last color, I went with another pastel color since I really like how sage green looks. I also wanted to include another color in case I wanted to experiment with something that gives off a pretty chill and fresh vibe. For my font research, I went with a lot of cursive fonts since I found them quite appealing and pretty. I also included a couple of fonts that weren't so much on the cursive side, but I liked the details included or the way that they looked. I wanted to apply a lot of this font research to my final logo, so this part of the assignment really helped me shape what I wanted to create. With the second font research, I continued to add cursive fonts with some more simplistic fonts on the side in case I wanted to experiment with that. For my mind map, I went with a lot of words that I find I relate to a lot so I could figure out what I wanted to explore for my self-branding items. For my stage 2 concept designs, I used Pinterest to find unique images of things that I either thought of myself or already had included in my mind map. I really like the look of a lot of beautifully designed items such as hand fans, hair clips, and pottery. For my Stylescape 1, I went through a lot of different hand fans while looking through Pinterest and thought that a flat seashell as a fan would be a cool, unique item to explore, so I added that into my Stylescape 1. I also thought the color pink and cursive text best suited this idea, so I included that too. For my Stylescape 2, I really liked one of the images I put into my self-branding item research of the silver hairbrush, so I added that. I also thought that the handles of the hairbrush looked like swords, so I had the idea of creating a sword-like comb and included silver since I thought it was most fitting. For the fonts, I kept it a bit more simple than the fonts in the Stylescape one. For my logo concept designs, I experimented with a lot of different logos as I didn't really know what to go for, but toward the end of my research, I was leaning more toward doing a cursive font. I experimented with that more on the second page of my logo concept sketches here. I also experimented with Russian since I thought it would be interesting to add in my second language. For my creative branding sketches, I experimented with a lot of unique combinations I saw during my research and also things included in my mind map. I was pretty happy with how these sketches turned out as I thought of a lot of different concepts and it helped me narrow down my last two ideas. I was also pretty happy with the second creative brand sketches too, as I got into a flow state and created several different combinations. For my design development, I began to work with two of my most favorite logos I did in my concept designs. I really liked the first logo as it was cursive and in Russian, and I thought the heart edition also made it stand out more than it would if it was just plain cursive. My second concept design was my nickname Milo, and I experimented more with the line work rather than the logo, but I still liked the uniqueness of it. For the refined sketches, I used Stylescape 1 to draw out the seashell fan how I imagined it would look like. I really liked the colors I incorporated and the fact that it looked like an actual fan design. For my second refined sketch, I went with the sword comb since I really liked the idea of a sword handle being used as a comb. I really enjoy looking at the different unique sword handles and thought it would be interesting to experiment and explore that design. For my logo development, I started off by using the curvature pen tool and started to develop the rough shape I needed. I then used the anchor points all throughout the logo to create the cursive effect and fixed up the anchor points along the way. I also used the width tool during this process so I could make some parts of the logo outlined wider and some parts outlined thinner. I then made the background black and then finished and included a white version of the logo afterwards. For my self-branding development, I ended up going for a sword comb as I found it unique and interesting. I also liked the amount of details I could apply and work with too. For the design, I used a series of three photos I found online and ended up masking and creating different parts so I could align them together to make the handle and base. I then also applied the comb part onto the knife handle and touched up the different parts. Here are the finished designs. I ended up doing a Russian cursive logo with a small heart emblem attached to the logo to make it more interesting. And here is my final refined self-branding item. I tried my best to make everything connect as much as possible, and I also tried my best to find images that were all similar in cuddle and metal texture so that the difference didn't stand out too much and it looked more natural. This is my final mock-up photo. For my reflection statement, I enjoyed sketching out the concept designs for the creative self-branding item and the freedom to explore different unique combinations. I also enjoyed creating the actual self-branding item in Photoshop too, since there were a lot of different things I got to explore and it was nice seeing things slowly coming together. I had a bit of difficulty creating the final mock-up image as I couldn't find anything that I thought was fitting for my design. So next time I would have put more effort and time aside to maybe take photos of my friends doing different poses or create my own photos of objects on a table so I wouldn't struggle as much next time. For my logo, I'm partially happy with it. I struggled a little bit creating it in Russian, but I'm also quite happy that I did it in Russian in the first place and experimenting with different aspects of that. If I were to redo this assignment, I would definitely leave more time aside for the mock-up Photoshop task since it's the only part I'm not that happy with. Thank you.